That's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of PvA Radio, the spookiest number for the spookiest time of the year. I'm one of your hosts, Luke Croft, and joining me, as always, freelance gaming journalist, Cody Mellowkline.
Heyo.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Had a good weekend. Coming off pumped from that, so I'm happy to talk about some games.
Also joining us this week, the only person who still actively tweets at John Nolan, Larry Hunt.
I'm not alone. There are literally dozens of us.
He actually replied to me one time.
Yeah.
Do you know who John Nolan is, Cody?
I am not familiar with him.
You ever heard of a little band called Taking Back Sunday?
I have.
He was the former backup singer, then he left to start Straight Light Run, and then he rejoined Taking Back Sunday for their last two albums, I believe.
Straight Light Run is my favorite
I not
band.
know him?
Yeah, Larry's a big fan of Straight Light Run. I also love Straight Light Run. I tweeted at him one time, though, because he said that he was a big Amy Grant fan, who was a contemporary Christian artist back in the day. And I asked if that was still true, and he said something like along the lines of absolutely. But that's my John Nolan story. Larry tweeted at him this week because what was the context?
I forgot. It was about, I said they made a TV show. Oh, Nathan Fillion's in a new TV show called The Rookie about an old guy who joins the police force, and his character's name is John Nolan. So I was like, I didn't know they made a TV show about John Nolan, but he did not respond to me.
That show looks like it sucks.
I'll watch anything with Nathan Fillion in it. I don't even care. It can be garbage. I'll watch the whole thing.
I feel like he is one of those guys like that Reddit will just eat up anything that he's into. Because I saw people yesterday like talking about the pilot has a lot of potential. The first episode, like it's pretty good. I'm like, there's no way that show's good.
Yeah. People are just hot on Nathan Fillion. They'll like Larry watch whatever he does.
Because of Firefly. That's all.
Oh, of course. He's bought a lot of goodwill.
And because he's a squad mate in Halo 5.
Oh, yeah, Buck.
How
Forgot
could I
all
forget?
about that.
This is PvA Radio. We get together every week and talk about the three biggest gaming news stories of that week, or 7 years ago, as we will come to find out here in a bit. But consider this your collaborative audio feature article, your CAFA. Get it tattooed on your body somewhere. You can find us on podcast services everywhere with new episodes posting every Tuesday. If you want to be a part of the show, visit playerversusall.com/PVAQ, but more on that later. Guys, let's move into some housekeeping. We got a lot of spicy. Well, I was going to say spicy news, but I like yours too. First, starting this week, episodes are going to be available on YouTube starting tomorrow. So cool. I linked it. So the way it's going to work here for the next few weeks is it'll just be audio with our logo on it, but it will be on YouTube. So if you prefer checking it out on YouTube, you can do that. When we upload to our podcast service, it'll just automatically push that over to YouTube for us. So kind of a set it and forget it thing. I say for the next few weeks because we got even grander news to stack on top of that. And that is that after some testing, I got to make my way out to Larry to get some stuff set up on his computer. We are going to be live streaming our episodes every Monday at 9 o'clock over on twitch.tv/PVA Radio. So go like that. That page exists already. You can, subscribe to that channel. Well, you can't subscribe. You can follow that channel and hit the notification bell to know when we're live. And then you can be a part of this beautiful creation that we make every week.
I'm so excited about this. I love live streaming. I don't even like podcasting. I'm kidding. I hate all of it.
I just got Larry's text that says, I don't have a Hangouts link yet 8 minutes ago. Did you get that? Did you ever get that?
Yeah. I found it. I'm here.
Fantastic. But yeah, so be on the lookout for that. That's exciting. And then we'll be able to take the video from that and push that over to YouTube instead, depending on audio quality. I've yet to decide. We'll figure it out. Guys, Nobody's here for the housekeeping. Nobody's here for the spicy news. They're here to figure out, Larry, how much Overwatch did you play last week?
One day. That's it. I had a really busy week. I've been changing my sleep schedule, so I'm just dead tired and sleeping all the time. So I didn't play video games except one night this week. I indulged in the Overwatch.
So that's all you've been playing?
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Was that the day I played with you?
Yeah.
And we actually won a lot.
We did. It was real out of the ordinary for us, but refreshing.
All right. That was quick. I'm actually going to go with what I've been playing next because I always go last. I don't like wrapping up.
Yeah, Cody. You can wait. Hold your horses.
Fuck me
Hold your
then,
horses,
right?
Cody. Well, Sinner sacrificed for redemption. For the first time in this show's existence, I have actually played a game from the game. There are too many games, but this isn't one of them. This was actually available on Game Pass. So I was like, why not? You know? So I downloaded it. It's not my style of game, right? Like it's a Dark Souls-esque game. But I don't feel like it. Caveat this: I did not play nearly enough to give like full blown impressions of the game and everything. But just the feel of it, like I feel like in order for a game like that to really be able to succeed, the mechanics of it have to be just like spot on, you know, because it's designed to be punishing. It's designed to be really difficult. And you never want to feel like the game is the thing that's screwing you over. You always want to, like, the thing I liked about Bloodborne was generally if I was dying, it was because of something I could point back to and say, okay, I fucked that up. So that's why I died. Not so much the case in Sinner Sacrifice for Redemption. The controls are a little stiff, a little unresponsive at times, and it kind of goes a bridge too far in the whole like doesn't explain to you anything about what's going on in the game too. So it kind of tries to mimic Dark Souls in that, but I don't think it executes it nearly as well. So yeah, there's a reason it made it in the game in our game last week. But if that's the kind of game you're into, I think the art style is real cool. The couple boss designs that I've seen from it are pretty tight. Like they have this giant bird man that's like really cool. I'm really into crows this year, man. I don't know why. We bought a doormat that has a bunch of crows on it, and we have a bunch of crows that live in this tree outside of our house. What's that?
Literal crow carcasses just glued to a mat. It's horrifying.
Well, they more ground into it than anything. And then I've been playing some more Call of Duty Blackout. I suck at that game, but it's so much fun. It's fun just because to reiterate some stuff I've already said about it. It just works, but also it's the Call of Duty mechanic that we all know and love, and we've come to know and love for years in a mode that I think needed something that had that smooth mechanic. Because even like Fortnite runs smooth, but I still don't feel like the gunplay is all that fun.
Yeah,
it's the worst part of
sucks.
it.
But I landed, so there's actually two spots now that I know of that zombie spawn. There's Asylum, but then there's the Lighthouse. And I killed a zombie there, and it dropped a ray gun. And that was the coolest thing in the world until I figured out that it had splash damage. And I ended up killing myself because I turned and shot way too close to a wall. And it killed me. But
nice.
I'm loving that game, man. Cody, are you any closer to possibly picking it up?
I probably will not be picking it up after this Friday.
What releases this Friday? Sinner Sacrifice for Redemption 2?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually. Sinner Sacrifice for Redemption Redux.
All right, what have you been playing, Cody?
I'm still chugging away in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I hopped in for Overwatch for a little bit, and I picked up Siege again for a little bit too, but mostly it's been Assassin's Creed. And I do want to say, so I'm about 50 hours into that game, and I put off a lot of the main story stuff. Not because I didn't enjoy it, just because I've been entranced by the side quests. There's a certain point in the main story where everybody who's afraid that it's not Assassin's Creed enough it definitely becomes Assassin's Creed at a certain point. And by that, I mean, like, the whack job science fiction first civilization stuff hits. And I normally just am not into that. But the way they integrate it into this game is just so over the top and bizarre that I couldn't help but just be drawn into it. Like, they start getting into kind of the Greek mythology stuff and tracing it back to the first civilization. And it's just super goofy and super fun. And so now the game has like a whole other element to it that just kind of got me reinvigorated into it. It's great.
Please tell me Hercules is the inventor of the Animus. Spoiler alerts, by the way.
Can't confirm or deny. I did want to mention.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is what you were saying before. This reminded me of it. There's a character, an NPC you come across, and he's part of a side quest that leads into a main quest, and his name is Testicles.
No, it's not.
His name is Testicles.
Wow.
Testikles, because it's Greek. And at no point is this remarked upon in the game. It is just presented before you. And it's, I mean, I laughed the first time and I laughed every other time because I have subtitles on. So it comes up with the name of the character who's talking every time.
Before we go off on a, okay, no, never mind. Nah. For some reason I was like, is Testicles like someone who is known in Greek history? But no, the first result that pops up is the Assassin's Creed wiki. So Testicles.
You know, there are worse things that could have popped up as the first result. So I'd be grateful if I were you.
Oh, let me turn safe search off. All right, guys. Let's move in to our follow-up section. Larry, I believe you have a follow-up from your story from last week.
I do. So last week we talked about Rockstar and rumors of crunch, which spawned from some of the head guys working a few 100-hour weeks toward the end of the development of the game.
Which was about how long last week's segment about it was as well. We went forever.
And here we are following up. Deal with it. There had been some rumors about Rockstar in the past overworking their employees. So this week we have a follow-up article from Stephen Totilo at Kotaku. And basically, I had a quote pulled up and then I scrolled up so that I could see who wrote the article because I'm bad at this.
Stephen Tortilla writes...
gosh, I lost the quote. But basically, the upper management of Rockstar realized over the course of this that although they had not been placing mandatory work overtime on employees, the employees felt that it was mandatory, and so they stressed that it wasn't mandatory. And that statement kind of conflicts with some other things where the employees said, I mean, it was mandatory. If you wanted to take a weekend off, you had to work a double weekend. And so the Rockstar gave their employees permission to speak publicly about their, work schedule, their workload. And I just wanted to read this little excerpt. Data shared by Rockstar with Kotaku indicated that the studio had asked daytime testers at Lincoln to work 52 and a half hours a week between October 9th, 2017 and August 6th, 2018. This was framed to employees as a company request to work 2.5 extra hours on 3 of every 5 weekdays and to work 1 7.5 hour weekend weekend day every 4 weekends. Night shift testers were asked to work 45 hours for some of that stretch and then 52 and a half. And later on in the article, it says that, if you look at the time actually clocked, it doesn't quite align with that. But then you also have statements where people are like, yeah, that may be because we worked through our lunch breaks and didn't get to count that as time worked, even though we were working. So all in all, it seems that, we mentioned this last week, even if you say overtime is not mandatory, if you've got a culture that's really pushing overtime, it may as well be mandatory. And that appears to be what's happened here. And it looks like management's taking steps to make sure that employees know that it's not mandatory. But at the end of the day, I don't know if that changes until the culture changes. But it does look like people weren't working nearly as crazy hours as the handful of guys who were doing 100-hour weeks.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through because I'm actually looking for a quote that jumped out to me as well. So, Cody, if you have any thoughts on this, feel free.
I think we saw there were several developments after we had talked about it. This and then also like you said, Larry, the Rockstar employees being allowed to talk about their working conditions. And a lot of those comments were, I mean, either I would say mixed to positive. Like most people were saying, none of us worked 100-hour weeks. And a lot of people were saying it's gotten way better since the days of GTA 4 and the original Red Dead Redemption. So it seems like this is a hard thing to tell because there's still a lot we don't know. And I think it's over the past week, it's been proven that this is not just it's not a simple issue. I think getting away from crunch is a simple thing to say, but Rockstar, the case of Rockstar in particular, is a lot more complex than I think we had believed it was last week. Whether you want to take the word of Rockstar employees who have been granted permission by their employer, who then feel pressure not to say anything negative. I mean, you could assume that. There's still a lot we just don't know about this, but it does seem, on the whole, that Rockstar, at least over the past 8 years, has been making an attempt to change its work culture based on what we've seen, at least so far. And I'm sure there's still more to come.
Yeah. I hate that I can't find where it said this. If I could pull it up on my computer without my computer just completely going on the fritz, I'd be able to see it. But there was a section in there where it basically talked about how it was communicated that this is no longer going to be mandatory, and I'm just going to spitball what it said, and if I find it, I'll bring it back up, and maybe it'll spark something in you guys' memory as well. But basically, where it said like, they'll still probably look at who's working overtime when it comes to like promotions and those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. Do you guys remember seeing anything like that in this article? Here it is. I have no doubt. I have no doubt in my mind when opportunities for promotion come up, they're going to open the gate for those who prove their dedication by working massive overtime. That is a thing which happens. Wait, I'm sorry, guys. This seems like I did the find feature and it just pulled up something random. But anyway, there was a part in there where it basically said like, hey, we're going to look at it, like the overtime works could also factor into when promotions come up and stuff like that. And I just, I think that when you say like, hey, this isn't mandatory, it needs to be more than just, this isn't what it takes to, like, you don't have to do this if you just want to keep your job, but you do need to do this if you want to get anywhere in this industry, because I don't imagine there's too many people working as QA testers that are just like, yeah, we just want to keep plugging away at what we're doing, playing games in a dark room, writing down all the bugs that we come across. Like, they want advancement in those. And so when you continue to harbor a culture of just like, hey, the person who's willing to dedicate themselves as much as possible to this job, I just think that like there needs to be better precedent set for how overtime is going to factor in. Like, look, the compensation you get for working overtime is that we're going to pay you for working the overtime, but we're not going to dock anybody off points for doing the job that they were hired to do in the amount of time that they were hired to do it, And I thought, from the Hausers last week, what was interesting was it was like, hey, we realize there are people that are working a lot less than us that are able to, a lot less time than us that are able to accomplish just as much, and like, you shouldn't be paying people just to be there. You should be paying people for the job that they do. And I think if you can effectively do what you're supposed to do in 40 allotted hours, like that should be worth just as much as a guy who gets the same amount done in 56 hours. It should actually be
about
worth
the
more.
work you're doing. Yeah.
Because it's cheaper at the end of the day to pay a guy for 40 hours than it is for 56 for the same amount of work. But I don't know. It's a step in the right direction. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop on this because Jason Schreier keeps hinting at like he's working on something bigger.
Yeah, and something more complex, which is what I'm interested in.
Yeah. So, well, to our listeners, apologies for me just fumbling completely through that, and I hate that I couldn't find what I was looking for. But we're going to move on.
And he still hasn't found what he's looking for.
I also apologize for that. Cody, what is your topic?
My topic, Loot Crate, which for anybody who doesn't know is a service that kind of a monthly service that delivers crates full of nerdy loot to your door. Loot Crate launched an indie game streaming service called Loot Play, which is essentially the same concept as their Loot Crate, except it delivers 5, and this is a quote, high quality, highly curated, unquote, indie games per month. The service costs $10 per month if you just go for the yearly plan, or $12 a month on a month-to-month basis. And the code, you get codes. So these are for PC games, Steam games. And one game will be announced ahead of time each month, while the other 4 are it's a mystery game grab bag kind of thing. So you don't know what the other 4 are. It's sort of similar, and people have noted this. It's very similar to the Humble Bundle idea, except in Humble Bundle you know exactly what you're getting, and they're usually not just focused on indie games. It's a anything from indie to AAA. And so yeah, I wanted to start off by asking, are you guys personally interested in this service? Is this something that you would actually consider getting?
I'm not really, but it's just I really don't play many indie games. I barely have time to play the bigger games that I want to play. And
Like the
just
2018 game of the year, Titanfall 2.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Don't get him on it again. Don't get him started.
Sorry.
It's all good. But just the type of game indie games typically are, like, there's a lot of platformer, a lot of 2D kind of stuff, and that's fun, and I like that kind of game. It's nostalgic. A lot of them are like nostalgic sort of games, but for me, like, those games, only like the best of those games interest me, where I've like heard people really going on about some of them, and so I'm not interested in shelling out money to get 5 of them delivered to me. But if one of these pops up and I can buy it through another avenue and people just go on and on about how great it is, I'd purchase it that way. But I'm not interested in the bundle.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with Larry. I mean, I like to play indie games, but to me, it's just like I don't want to pay for a subscription not knowing what I'm going to get when I can probably out of the 5 games I get, there's probably one I'll be interested in, and I can just take that $12 or $10 and just buy it outright, without just like luck of the draw, hoping that they pick something that I'm going to be interested in. But yeah, I'm not really a big fan of any of the, like, Loot Crate's primary service of like, hey, pay for this box, we're just going to send you a box of shit. Like, I'm not generally for like clutter and paying for unnecessary stuff. And so I don't think I want that in my digital life either.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, I think, is I would say all 3 of us are primarily console gamers. I think if you ask someone who is very much a Steam user if they would be interested in this, they might tend to be more interested in it, because clutter is part of being on Steam. Like, I have so many friends who live the Steam life and will just buy all these games when they're on the winter sale, summer sale. They'll just sit in their queue. They'll never play them, but they have them there, and they like knowing that they're there. I think consuming games on Steam is a little bit different than the marketplace that we're used to, where we pay for the game and we're going to play it because we're paying for it on console. It's not like we have a massive library of stuff. And I guess I would say I'm sort of interested in it. The thing that interests me is the language they use. The fact that I don't know what their bar for high quality or highly curated is. I'll be interested after the first couple months what that means, because the game the one that they did reveal is a Devolver Digital game called Crossing Souls, which is like a adventure game in the style of Goonies, like a Goonies adventure, very heavily influenced by 80s and 80s nostalgia. And that game is, from what I've heard, very all right. So I think this is something that I'll kind of wait to see how it goes. And again, I'm not a huge fan of Loot Crate as a service either, because a lot of the stuff they ship out is just clutter, like you said. It's just stuff for the sake of having stuff.
Well,
yeah, we've got
go ahead.
We've got a friend who gets one, and he gets some cool stuff in it sometimes, but he gets a lot more stuff that I don't think is that great.
Yeah,
and it varies very much so on a case-to-case basis, because they're themed, as far as I understand, they're themed based on certain properties, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And can you think of like 60 really... I'm sorry, 60 high-quality indie games that are coming out every year? Like, you already just said the first one that they revealed is very all right. Each month, subscribers get 5 very all right quality, very all right curated, decently curated. I just think it's a numbers game, and it's like I don't see 60 games of that quality all agreeing to become a part of your service. Because it's not just, are there 60 great indie games that are going to come out, but is it 6 great indie games that are going to be like, hey, yeah, we want you to give us away to all of your subscribers.
Yeah, and I do actually think there are probably 60 great indie games that come out each year, but they're not the kind of games that will be spotlighted in this service. They're like itch.io games and like very, very indie games, which kind of gets at my next question. And I think we've already sort of answered it, but do you think Loot Crate is the right company to curate an indie subscription service?
Huh. Yeah, I don't really know what the I don't see it because I haven't seen them do anything in this realm before. But I may be wrong. They may surprise me.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, you have to imagine that they're hiring a whole new division of people to kind of spearhead this with a whole different set of talents, with some like game criticism backgrounds or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, Loot Crate is about the volume of stuff that you can get and not necessarily about the quality of the stuff that you can get. And I don't really even understand the purpose of this kind of curation to begin with, of this kind of like, it's not a la carte curation. You're not curating this list of games and then like delivering it at a storefront so that people can pick. You're basically just like vomiting 5 indie games onto somebody each month and hoping something sticks. And it's just like, it's not that I don't even see Loot Crate as the right company to do it. It's just like, is this the right method of which to do this? I think curation is more involved in like, how does Steam organize their storefront? How does PlayStation and Xbox organize their storefronts to put these games because of their own merit in front of people's eyes and not just put it in front of people because, oh, it's a part of this subscription that I paid $10 a month for.
Yeah, I think in a way, I do think that Loot Crate, their goals are, at least as they state them, are admirable. Whether or not, I don't think that like you can base it off a comment made by their product marketing head, but Eric Reynolds, who's the VP of product marketing at Loot Crate, said they're solving 2 problems. We want to help subscribers find new games that are curated with a focus on creative new voices, and we want to help these independent studios reach new audiences through our large network of looters. And it's the second one that I can kind of understand. Like, there are a lot of people who subscribe to Loot Crate, and using that network to basically serve as a megaphone to get people's creative, quote unquote, creative voices out there is an admirable goal. I don't know if yeah, I think you're right, Luke. Like, just shooting 5 codes for indie games into someone's email inbox. I don't know if that's the right way to do it. And it very much depends on who is curating these games. There are obviously companies that already have partnerships with Loot Crate. And I would be curious how those partnerships factor into which games Loot Crate chooses to send out each month. I just don't know. I don't know if curation is in this way, like you said, is the right way to go. I think there's a on the other end of the spectrum, there is certainly a curation problem with Steam, and I think this service is attempting to be a corrective to that. Obviously, Steam has gotten a lot of flack over the past year or so about like essentially just being a dumping ground for any kind of game you want to shoot onto it. And I think it's becoming harder and harder to find the diamond in the rough on Steam. And so I think in a way this is I don't know if intentionally or not, it is trying to be a corrective to it, but I see it as a way to find those diamonds in the rough. Because there are great indie games out there, and there are great indie games on Steam all the time, but they're buried amidst a fucking garbage heap of other games that are just being shot onto Steam every day.
Yeah, so I have a couple points to make in this. First is that in marketing, you talk a lot about like whenever I'm talking to clients, the thing they want to see is like, well, how many people are coming to my website, right? Like, what are my traffic numbers like? And these are people that are like trying to sell a product or a service. They're not like ad generation or anything like that. So they're trying to get sales, and it's like, look, the traffic to your website is like a vanity number, right? It's about the like sales qualified leads that you drive through your place. And I just feel like these curation systems, it's like you said, you already talked about the buying habits of Steam users. And it's like, does this really get these games in front of people who will play it? Or is it just going to get it into the queues of people who will never get around to it? And I just think you add 60 more games to the hoarding mentality of many Steam users. Like, I don't think you're really servicing publishers, and I mean servicing indie developers by saying like, well, we'll be able to just puff up your download numbers, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, we got X amount of downloads, but half of those are people who are never going to even launch my game. And then I think about like, Future Labs came out a couple months ago talking about Velocity 2X and how the being featured on as a PS Plus game really like hurt their sales and hurt their ability to potentially make a sequel to that game, because we had engagement on it, but we didn't drive the sales needed to justify a sequel to this game. Like, and so you got to wonder, like, how are these indies going to measure their success within this? Because you have to imagine, like, freaking indie Turd Pot 1 comes out and gets blasted out on this, and a bunch of people play it. Well, did it generate enough revenue to justify Indie Turd Pot 2 coming out? Mm-hmm. And I think there's history behind the fact that it often doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think the games that really succeed, like financially and in the long term, from things like being featured on Games with Gold and PS Plus, are franchises. Yakuza got a huge boost from one of their games being featured on it because it was an entry point for people to get into it without having to buy in financially. And then once they knew they liked it, they could springboard onto another Yakuza title. And a lot of indies don't really have that leeway. Like if their first indie is featured on, like you said, PS Plus or Games with Gold or something like this, and who knows how many people download it, but if it's a huge success on one of those services, I mean, they don't really see much of that financially. And so it doesn't help them much because it was them trying to get something off the ground or at least get it in front of people. And it certainly got in front of people, but it doesn't help them move forward with that idea or move forward as a studio. I just, I think services like this certainly benefit specific developers over others, I would say. And so I guess my last question is, you guys already said you're probably not going to buy into this, but I'm sure some people will. And this is a question that I've been asking myself more and more when it comes to streaming services and TV and film. Are there too many gaming subscription services out now? I think this is something that isn't, at least in my opinion, isn't too much of a problem now, but I can see it becoming already a problem in the future.
Yeah, I didn't think about it when I put my article in, but my topic's going to get into that as well. And so for now, all I'll say is I agree with you. It's not yet, but I think it's about to be.
Well, and I think, I know we have a set rotation here, but I think it would be probably good to talk about Larry's topic.
Yeah.
Kind of segue into that as well, because this question, I think, is a good overlap of the Venn diagram of the two. So you kind of want to kick yours off, Larry, not to put you on the spot.
Yeah. So we bring you the three biggest news articles in gaming this week. And so I want to tell you about an article written in October of 2011.
Talking about Steam, though.
The Steam engine.
So just 7 short years ago, Gabe Newell, one of the co-founders of Steam, gave a talk. And in this talk, he talked about Steam's when Steam moved into the Russian market. And a lot of people warned them off from doing that because piracy in Russia was so bad at the time. But there were reasons for that. And one of the big reasons was a lot of companies were waiting up to 6 months to localize their products to Russia. And that's kind of a big deal. If people can't get a hold of something, they're going to find a way to get a hold of it. There were also internet availability issues. So games that required you to be online to obtain, people would find ways to sell them physically. But a lot of companies responded to this by putting anti-piracy technology into their software. But Newell said, quote, "The easiest way to stop piracy is not by putting anti-piracy technology to work. It's by giving those people a service that's better than what they're receiving from the pirates," end quote. And that's exactly what Steam did. Rather than focusing on anti-piracy software, they provided a way for Russian gamers to obtain games in a legal way that was easier than the illegal way of obtaining them. And big shock, Steam took off in Russia, and it was a really successful market for them. So we've learned this lesson in gaming. We've learned this lesson in music with the crazy piracy that was going on, and then iTunes comes along, and it was easier to buy songs than to pirate songs, so piracy basically died out. We learned this lesson in video. Why would I pay some sketchy dude for a bootleg DVD when I can get it for $1 from Redbox or stream it without even leaving my house? And so getting into the question you've asked, Cody, are there too many gaming subscription services? I wonder if we're about to forget this lesson and have to be taught this lesson again. Because with this plethora of streaming services, there's a fragmentation that's happening. And I really started thinking about this with the cancellation of Luke Cage and Iron Fist. And you and I have kind of talked about there's some speculation that they haven't really been canceled, but maybe Disney has snatched them up for their streaming service. So you've got exclusivity among video streaming services. You've got timed exclusivity. There was a time where you could watch live TV shows shortly after on Netflix, but then Hulu came along, and now that's what you have to do that. But if you want to watch a whole season, an entire series of something, you also have to have Netflix if you want to catch up. So as game streaming looms on the horizon, and we've talked about Project xCloud, but I apparently never remembered to actually call it by name. So Project xCloud is the streaming service that Microsoft is working on. So you've got that in the mix. You've got this Loot Crate gaming thing going on. You've got Nintendo looking into streaming games. You've got has Sony announced that they've looked into this?
You've got PlayStation Now, which is kind of their Game Pass service.
That's right. So as you see all these streaming services, do you see the possibility of some of these issues coming into play for gaming, or do you think there are some things about the current state of gaming that are going to insulate them from these issues? And so the first one would be exclusivity and timed exclusivity, being able to find those things. Like, I don't know. How do you think all this is going to play out?
Yeah, well, to your point about streaming and piracy, I did want to bring up this article from Polygon. This was actually at the beginning of this month from Julia Alexander. A section of it reads, Cam Cullen, the vice president of global marketing at Sandvine, a leading research and network company, wrote a blog post condensing the findings of an in-depth report released yesterday. The most interesting detail notes that usage of torrent services like BitTorrent are up almost 10% since 2015. Between 2011 and 2015, BitTorrent saw a massive decline in usage within the United States, dropping from 52% to just under 27%. Now the number of people using BitTorrent is beginning to increase again, and Cullen said that's because of exclusive content divided among streaming services. And I think we're going to see a massive uptick in that come middle of next year when the last season of Game of Thrones comes around. I think you do see like kind of these cultural spikes where there's certain television shows and stuff that people are really into, but it's like, I don't want to pay $15 just to go play that game. I think in gaming, at least console side, I don't necessarily see that being an issue because the ecosystem is so insulated from that already. Like, those companies have already really figured out how to curb piracy. I mean, they can detect fake games and ban consoles and accounts and those sorts of things. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's ever going to be widespread enough within any of the even PC gaming where it's going to see like a massive uptick in because you got to think like how many people are making games, but out of those, how many of those games are being made by just like powerhouse publishers? You know, you've got your EAs, and EA already has their own stuff with like EA Access and Origin Access. Bethesda has the power to do that sort of stuff. Ubisoft has the power to do that stuff. Then your first parties, and then Activision. But outside of that, like, I don't know if there's any real major publisher that can really step back and have the power to create their own service that's going to generate an audience. So you're always going to have a market for like one-off purchasing of stuff. And it's also just the way that we've been conditioned for years and years to buy it. Whereas we grew up with TV thinking like, as kids, like TV was just there, you turned it on and your television shows, your cartoons, all that just comes out of the box. And like, as a kid, even you didn't really understand like that was being paid for. But I think gaming has always been that thing of like, well, I got to save my money to get a game. And so it's just kind of built into our psychology about it all.
Yeah, I think exclusivity I wouldn't even say it's an issue with console games. I think it's just a reality. And so I don't even know, like, people just come to understand you either buy into PlayStation, you buy into Xbox, you buy into Nintendo, or you buy into all three. And most of the other major games you can get wherever you want. So I don't know if it's a problem that will drive people into piracy. Film and television is a completely different thing because I think essentially streaming is becoming the new cable. And I think with Disney, with DC getting their own streaming service and all these other companies essentially just ditching what we've come to expect as traditional cable models and moving into streaming, it's just repeating an ecosystem. It's recreating an ecosystem that they're ditching and they're moving into something else. And then after that will become another, whatever the next streaming is, will reforge that ecosystem. But in terms of gaming, I don't know if it'll become as rampant of an issue for all the reasons that Luke listed. We've just come to expect and to consume games in a different way than we consume other media. And I think your question about game streaming, Project X Cloud, all of these new services is an interesting one, because I don't know if that will affect it, but I just don't see the things that are driving people towards piracy and other media affecting gamers as much, or at least gamers thinking about it as much.
Yeah. And so I kind of agree with that point of the piracy thing isn't going to go up because it's so difficult to pirate things in gaming without getting permabanned. And that's great for all kinds of reasons. So I don't think that can happen. But things that I do think can happen, this kind of doubles back to the question you asked of, are there too many gaming subscription services? I don't think there are yet. But with all these things coming out, like, all these things can't be successful. No one's got money to be subscribed to all these things, and they're going to be games that are exclusive to those services. And so I wonder if we're going to watch the whole, I just blanked on the term, Skylanders, the Lego
Twist to
thing.
Life.
Yes. I wonder if we're about to watch that play out again, maybe, where everyone does this cool thing, but most of them wind up failing.
Yeah, the gaming industry is so strange, like in comparison to other media, because it's not like you have, you have some music that's like, oh, it's exclusively coming out on, Spotify first and then to other services or whatever. Yeah, Tidal. I couldn't remember what the big one was that was one of their practices, but yeah, Tidal. And you have the television shows that are like, it's coming to Netflix, yada yada. But in terms of like the hardware of it, it works across the gamut, like if I have Netflix, I can watch Netflix on my iPad, I can watch Netflix on my TV, I can watch Netflix on my Xbox and on my PlayStation 4. Like, there's no exclusivity between hardware. And you have some wonky examples where it's like, Amazon doesn't let any Google apps onto the Fire Stick and stuff like that. You have dumb shit like that. But whereas in gaming, like, you have kind of at the same time this homeostatic relationship where everybody's just got to kind of work together if you're a third party publisher. And it's like, we're releasing our games on Xbox and PlayStation. But then you also have this stuff that's like, hey, we are so dependent on our own hardware to sell Halo or to sell Uncharted. Like, and that's not really something that exists in any other media. That kind of like bound to hardware exclusivity kind of deal. And so I just don't think you're going to be able to see kind of that same like pigeonholing yourself into one kind of specific streaming model for it, unless we get to the point where it's like, hey, Xbox is more of a cloud streaming service that you can put on your phone, you can put on your smart television, you can put on your PlayStation. And it becomes less tied to the hardware. If it becomes hardware agnostic, I do think that we could get to that point where, like, okay, the buck's got to stop somewhere. We're paying $300 a month for services to be able to play all these games. Like, so I can see a future like that, but I don't know if either company is really ready to kind of give up the hardware ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the primary difference. And it's kind of like, you're right. With the way we consume television and movies and music, like those aren't dependent on the hardware. We can pretty much watch them and listen to them on anything we have, as long as we have the service. Gaming has always been built, and at least for the foreseeable future, will be built around the hardware that we buy. And it goes back to the point you made. Like, when we were kids, we would think about saving up our money to buy an Xbox or a PlayStation or a Nintendo console so we could access those games. And I think it's just they're two different ways of thinking about access. You think about television and film as subscription services as accessing it through a financial investment. And I think you're still doing that when you're buying a console and you're buying games, but you're more thinking about what ecosystem you're buying into. which is kind of a different way of thinking about it. And you can, I mean, for all the subscription services that are out there in gaming, even the PS Pluses and the Xbox Game Passes, not the Game Passes, the games with gold, you can still get those games, most of the games they offer it, on the other console.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly exclusive
And
yet.
outside.
Nintendo a little... Yeah, and outside it. You can get it on Steam, you can get it on whatever
and I'm
you
even
want.
saying like, this game's on Games with Gold. Even if I'm not a subscriber, I can just buy the game on Xbox. You know, it's like it's not locked behind that paywall.
Yeah, and it's usually discounted as well. I mean, Nintendo's a different matter because Nintendo's always been its own thing. So that's as exclusive as it gets. But yeah, I don't see this being that much of a problem yet. I think you're right. If it ever becomes the case where hardware is no longer if companies are no longer tied to the hardware they're producing on, then it will become a whole different thing. But I don't know when that would happen.
I mean, I can see Xbox eventually pulling that ripcord. Like, realistically, I think they could say, like, okay, we've got this one iteration of hardware that's coming after the Xbox One X, and then we're just going crazy. We've got this Project X Cloud that we're just going to deploy everywhere. You're going to be able to play it on everything. Like, whip out your iPad, connect a controller to it, and boom, you're playing Xbox games on your iPad. Like, without having to own hardware to link back to it. I think we could potentially get there, but I just think your Sonys and your Nintendos are just going to clutch to their boxes.
Yeah. That's what I'm more worried about. I can see, I mean, out of the three major companies, I think Microsoft would be the most willing to do this, but I still don't think that means that their exclusive games or exclusive, quote unquote, will land on a Nintendo or an Xbox because a Switch or a PlayStation, just because of the way those two companies think about their products. I think Microsoft is, at least as far as we've seen, is starting to look a little bit forward towards creating kind of a very fluid gaming ecosystem. And the two other companies are a lot more set in their solid ways, I guess. They're more like statues.
Yeah. So I keep bringing up topics related to this, these game streaming ideas, because this just really fascinates me. I'm really interested in it. And I'm just going to spring this question on you so that I don't have to bring this topic up again next week. Are there any other issues or benefits that you guys see coming from this once these services begin to launch? So, like, one thought that I had, I don't know enough about it, but it seems to me that streaming games from the company's hardware might be an increased way of guarding against modding and cheating, because at least the ways that I'm aware of cheating in console gaming, you kind of have to modify your console to make that happen. But if you're just streaming the game from Microsoft's hardware, it seems like that would be harder to pull off. And that excites me because I hate cheaters. Yeah,
and then there can be detection software that just shuts you out from that server, you know. I definitely can see that being a thing. One thing I do worry about in this future is just that it's going to cut out a lot of the, like, middle tier game development, because it's not an equal platform, you know. Like, the bigger companies are going to get their paychecks, and they're going to be sustainable. Like, Xbox is going to say, hey, Bethesda, we're going to pay you X amount for this game to be on here, plus a bonus for, you know, engagement or whatever. And then the indie studios, they'll probably have some sort of, you know, individual price model for it. But like your Hellblades, that level of gaming, like, if we go to an all streaming, all subscription based platform, like, I just think you're going to lose out on those sorts of titles, because there's just not going to be a financial space to make them.
That's why Xbox is buying all of them.
Yeah, I worry that that's going to happen anyway. Just that's where movies are right now, right? The middle budget movie is dead. You either have blockbusters or indie films, and that's not great.
Yeah, all the
there's
middle
some
stuff is moved to TV.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Well, I guess that's all I've got, unless you guys have anything else to add on this. Or if you need, I don't know if what I had tied into your question adequately, Cody.
No, it did. Yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking about it.
all right. Well, let's talk about Sony, and let's talk about a little game called Days Gone, because it has been delayed.
Speaking of 2011, just kidding. It wasn't
Not
that long ago.
ago, but almost. It has been delayed yet again. It was supposed to come out in 2018. Then they were like, oh, no, we're going to release it in February of 2019. Well, now they're not releasing it in February. Instead, it's going to come out on April 26, 2019. And then Sony wrote a kind of interesting little thing on the PlayStation blog, and I wanted to read that for you. It says, quote, "We recently decided to move the release of Days Gone from the crowded February timeframe to April 26, 2019. While the studio is eager to see Days Gone in the hands of fans, Ben Studio will take the opportunity to further polish Days Gone," end quote. I thought the candidness of that quote was interesting, that they were just we all knew that end of February time frame was just like who's going to blink first, because you have Anthem coming out there, you have the new Metro game coming out. What else is Crackdown 3 on that day as well?
Yep.
And then like just a couple weeks after, you get like the Division 2 is coming. Like it's just a crowded space, and so we all kind of knew that it was just a who's going to blink first kind of deal. And it turns out that it's Days Gone. Before we jump into specifically talking about Days Gone, I do want to get us on the record, because for the Player 3 podcast, we kind of just had like a set precedent for what we felt about game delays, so that we didn't have to just continue to reiterate it and cover every single delay story. So let's just get it out on the table. How do you guys feel about delays in general?
In general, I don't have a problem with it. Like, if you need more time to polish your game, if like even this, where you've got a tight release window, like I'm okay with a delay when it makes sense. But on the other hand, and this falls into that as well. On the other hand, if you've been announcing your game and advertising your game for years and years and years, like there comes a point where delay after delay after delay just makes me real apprehensive about getting into your game.
Yeah, I think I'm almost always in favor of a delay. If it means you get to spend more time on your game, if it means... I've been thinking about this a lot more after our discussion last week in light of the Rockstar stuff. I would have 100% preferred a delay of Red Dead 2 to developers putting in 100-hour weeks. And those two aren't always tied to each other. But if it is the case where if you're worried about overworking your employees, if you're worried about releasing a game that is not as polished as you'd like, go ahead and delay it. I'm fine. I'm fine waiting. I've always been fine waiting for my entertainment. There's always other games to play. And if it means a better product, and if it means your employees will be happier and healthier on the other end of it, go ahead. I do agree with what Larry said. If it's a constant delay situation, I become a little bit hesitant about the progress that game is making. But I would rather them delay it over and over again than release a subpar game, unless it's like a Last Guardian situation where the development is just kind of absurd.
Yeah, I'm of the mind that a delay is a good thing. I am hoping that as we move into a future where, number one, I do hope the development cycles for games becomes longer to kind of accommodate for the issues that we spent so long talking about last week. But also just the more that people kind of follow the Fallout 4 trend, even though Bethesda themselves didn't do it, because they're like, here's a game that we just have a logo for, Starfield. I was hoping the pendulum was swinging back towards announcing games when they're closer to the going gold state than previously. And so the more we hopefully see those trends grow, the less and less we're going to hear about delays, and the more it is going to be something like this is a very practical delay that that Days Gone is going through. It's just like, hey, we really don't want to release our game in the weeds of like 5 other games, because we saw what happened to the 2018's Game of the Year, Titanfall 2, when it came out originally in 2016.
Yes. Yes.
Especially a new IP.
Yeah, definitely. And in an IP that in and of itself is already pretty crowded, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute.
Oh,
too.
yeah,
Like,
very much so.
It's got to stand out.
Games with guns.
What's that?
Yeah, just kidding.
So, what do you guys make of Days Gone itself, like moving out of that February window, and the candidness of Sony to just be like, yeah, that's why we did it?
So again, repeated delays make me apprehensive, and this is about the only way they could have made this delay, and I'm okay with it. But if you're going to have repeated delays, you have to have real direct communication. This is why we're delaying, and it needs to very obviously not be bullcrap. And this is very obviously not bullcrap. So I'm cool with this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always in favor of transparency. It's something that Sony said they were going to try to be more in their Sony blog post communications. So it's nice to see them doing that already. I think it's a great idea to delay this game out of that window. Out of the 4 games that were announced then, I think this is probably the one I would have expected to move. Crackdown 3 is part of a long-running series. Anthem has been hyped up the wazoo and is being created by a studio people are already very familiar with. And it's an idea people have seen executed, but not exactly in this way. What was the other one? Metro Exodus? Metro Exodus is also a long-running series, and I think this is going to be a jumping-on point for a lot of people. It's also just a very different kind of game than the other 4. And then this is a new IP, a studio people are familiar with, but not like, I think if you said the name of it, a lot of people wouldn't recognize it. And as we're going to talk about, this is an idea that is at this point very stale and kind of needs a little bit of breathing room if people are even going to buy into it in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with all of those points. I mean, not to mention Crackdown 3 couldn't delay again because it broke through that ceiling of being delayed too many times that you have absolutely no faith in it, like 5 or 6 delays ago. So yeah. And there's my little moment to shit on Xbox, because I feel like all I do is talk crap about PlayStation on this podcast. But yeah, like I just think that there was no other studio, like you said, Cody, that was going to blink and move their date. EA is tied in with investor stuff that they weren't going to be able to push this game either. And I think that, following the success of God of War in the time that it came out, I think Sony's just trying to recapture that. Like, hey, if we give our IP the space. But I think what they're going to find out, and we can kind of move into our last 2 questions here. Like, I think what they're going to find out with this is that God of War was placed on a pedestal because of its quality, not because of its release window. And I just don't see that being the case with Days Gone. There's something that Days Gone doesn't pass the smell test for me, right? So like, let's just kind of walk through a little bit of history here. So Sony revealed Days Gone 2 years ago at E3, right?
Has it only been 2 years?
I'm pretty sure it was 2 years ago, because there was the whole story about like they were going to show a Red Dead trailer, yada yada, but it had like a bar getting shot up. It was right after the Pulse nightclub shooting, all that sort of stuff. So they showed Days Gone, and then they showed this just extended gameplay of Days Gone, which was just like kind of the weirdest feeling gameplay thing I've ever experienced at an E3 that wasn't done by Ubisoft. And it really did feel like a tack on. Well, then this year's E3 comes around, and everybody's saying like, okay, they're gonna, there's gonna be stuff for Days Gone at E3. Well, Sony reveals that they're focusing on 4 of their exclusive games. Days Gone is not one of them. And instead, they use the the PlayStation blog to announce Days Gone's release date ahead of E3, which was a weird thing. And then we didn't see anything from it during E3, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
I don't remember.
Well,
anything.
around that same time, Game Informer did a huge cover story for it, too. So they were showing off a bunch of stuff.
But they still didn't take any time during the biggest stage, during the moment where all eyes in the gaming industry are on you, to show a game that wasn't going to have another E3 before its release. And to me, that feels really, really strange for a game that looks as big and as ambitious as they're hoping Days Gone is going to be. Like, to not give it that stage, to not give it that platform, makes it feel like people on the inside know, like, okay, this game may not be as big as we are hoping it's going to be. Are you guys excited for this game? Do you guys kind of get that same sense too? Like, I'm more than open to having my mind changed about this, but that's just kind of how I feel about it.
So, I don't have a PlayStation, so I can't be excited for it in that regard. But I want to be excited for this game. So on the one hand, you have, as you've stated, you have a genre that's oversaturated. But on the other hand, when was the last time we had a really good zombie game, you know? And so I want to be excited for it in that regard. But I'm kind of with you. You didn't show it on the biggest stage of the year when there are no more E3s before its release. But you did have time to talk about Death Stranding. There are like 8 more E3s between now and its release.
We're going to milk this thing.
And I do think that it does communicate a lack of faith in this game. Because honestly, it was announced so long ago. For me, these things tend to fade from my mind when they're drug out. Like Crackdown 3, I thought it was out. I'll be honest.
You and Terry Crews, brother.
Yeah, so for them to not take a moment to just refresh everybody, hey, this at least remind us, hey, this game is coming out. Like, I don't know, it does. Like
they sprinkled Dreams all throughout E3. For the love of God, and they can't give a 30-second spot to Days Gone.
This is the shyest Sony has been about an exclusive in a long time. Because they've been, over the last, I would say, 3 years, they've been on a streak. Just hit after hit after hit with their exclusive games in terms of quality and in terms of financial performance. I have a PlayStation, and I am personally not interested in this game for, I think, a lot of the reasons that a lot of people aren't. Like, I remember I always watch and keep a tab on Game Informer's cover story stuff that they do, and a lot of the response to the game, not just their coverage, was pretty tepid. It is, I think, even when this game was announced, what you said it was in 2016?
Yeah, let me double check on that. I think that's right.
Okay. I mean, it doesn't matter. 2015, 2016, whenever it was announced, that felt 4 years too late. Zombies just haven't been, like, zombies had their day about four or 5 years ago. And I think people have, we've seen it get lower and lower returns ever since when people turn to this genre. The exception being The Last of Us, which technically isn't a zombie game. But it's just a genre that's been stale and oversaturated in a market that is very familiar with oversaturation of genres. And the stuff they've shown so far hasn't been especially impressive. I mean, the bikers in a zombie apocalypse is just not my bag, I guess. And the gameplay looks like a worse open world and a less interesting open world than Horizon offered, and a less engrossing story than The Last of Us offered. So I don't know exactly what this game is offering that people are interested in. That's just me though. Maybe there's something.
Not to mention that, like, I think the original reveal of it came across a lot like a tech demo of what the PS4 could handle in terms of like animations at a given time, because it was just like World War Z, swarms of zombies coming after you, and you're just mowing through them with a gun. And it's just like, it's not appealing to me. Like even if you were to tell some awesome story underneath it, like trying to juxtapose it next to the carnage that you're going to be doing in this kind of what seemed not quite as over the top as a Dead Rising, but still almost to that level. You just didn't have like wacky weapons as you were mowing through the crowds. Like it didn't seem like it was going to do anything super compelling. I think for Sony, the ambition was just the massive hordes of zombies that you were going to have to fight at any given time. And I just think that even since that game, and it was revealed in 2016, even since that game has been revealed, like what people are looking for in games has just completely changed.
Yeah, it just felt like it was coming at a weird time. Like people weren't it seems like a game from another era. I mean, not in terms of what it's delivering technically, but in terms of what it's delivering and everything else. And by the way, when Game Informer ran their video coverage of the game, I think it was this year, it was this summer, that horde stuff did not look like it was performing well on a PS4. It was stuttering really badly. The frame rate was dropping like crazy. So I don't know, like, I think they did actually genuinely have a lot to refine. So maybe this delay will help with that, but I'm being hard on this game just because I expect a lot from Sony exclusives so far. Like their track record has been great the past few years, and this just doesn't seem like it's on par with the other stuff we've seen. Yeah,
given what we know about the game right now, is there anything that you think like, hey, this is something it can do differently in the zombie genre, and really become like a must-own product, a must-play game? Given that we know like it's hordes and hordes of zombies that you're going to be fighting.
So the zombie genre is actually my favorite genre, even though it's oversaturated right now.
Sorry.
My stepmom loved Romero, so like I grew up watching Romero movies. Every zombie movie we could get our hands on, we'd watch. Even the crappy ones where Romero and his friend, I forget his name, they had a little breakup and made these awful zombie movies. Return of the Living Dead, that series. Like zombies they're really it's a really horrifying concept, and we've talked about this in horror before. But once you get too familiar with the monster, like it just doesn't affect you anymore, you know. and we've gotten to that point with zombies for sure. All right, shoot them in the head, they're done. Like, oh, your friends are going to turn. How terrible. So yeah, it's oversaturated, but like I said a minute ago, I think it's been a long time since we really had a really well-made zombie game. I mean, the Telltale Walking Dead games they're all right, I think. I was never into Dead Rising quite as much as some other people were. I enjoyed Dead Island. In my opinion, the greatest zombie games we've ever received were the Left 4 Dead series. But I know you don't like those, Luke, because it was too chaotic, too crazy. And this game looked like that in some ways to me, and that actually excited me about this game. It's a turnoff for you, but for me, it was pretty exciting. But there's always, every time I've seen this game, it's always been kind of weird looking at how that horde moved. It didn't seem very intelligent. It seemed like it's going to follow this set path almost. So it didn't seem like Left 4 Dead where you can really navigate the horde the way you wanted to. The horde seems like a monster. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And so like that doesn't excite me about it. So I think there is room for a zombie game done well. I think it's the genre is oversaturated with zombie games not done well. But what does this game need to do? It needs to have fun gameplay. It needs to have good mechanics. Like that's what's lacking from zombie games.
Outside of Dying Light, that's the big one you're missing. Dying Light,
true.
Yeah. That is a good one as well.
It doesn't.
But I think about all the.
when does Dying Light 2 come out? It comes out around the beginning of the year, right? Let me look that up.
Does it?
Yeah, I don't know the release date on that one.
But for every like Dying Light, you've got like 10 games that they only sell because they have zombies in them, you know?
Or terrible licensed Walking Dead games.
Yeah. If you're a new developer looking to make a game, it's going to be a zombie game. That's kind of where we're at. It's the go-to villain. So I don't know. The oversaturation comes too much from those games. I think you could have a fun zombie game done well, but I don't really have a lot of confidence that this is it.
There's no release date for Dying Light 2 unless freelance gaming journalist Cody Mellowkline has the scoops.
I think they only really revealed that this past E3, right?
For some reason, it felt like one of those like
So
revealed and then a window, but it didn't have a window.
Well, they've been doing a beta or been hyping up a beta for their Battle Royale mode, because they're having one of those, of course. But in terms of Days Gone, the one thing that kind of intrigues me about it is, well, I like the setting. I think it's set in the Northwest, which is different. It's a setting that I always wanted The Last of Us to go to, and it seems like The Last of Us is going to in part 2. The bikes idea is interesting, I guess. Like the thing that they've been stressing is like the importance of your crew, like both in terms of gameplay and in terms of how you interact with it in the story. So I think if they like nail a Mass Effect-y kind of crew dynamic, that could be kind of cool. I haven't seen in the gameplay that much, but the survival aspect, I like survival games, and so integrating that into a large open world zombie game could be kind of cool. But I haven't seen much of that in the gameplay they've shown so far.
Another thing that I think could be cool is, and this game isn't going to do that, but when you hear zombie game, you have a setting automatically. It's post-apocalyptic, blah, blah, blah. Like, it would be refreshing to not drop into the middle of a society that's already been totally broken down. And there are games that have kind of done that. Resident Evil kind of does that. I think Dying Light maybe was that case. It was just happening on that island. But within the locality, society's broken down enough that it's basically post-apocalyptic anyway. I think it would be cool to explore, like, the beginning of an outbreak or an outbreak where you actually, like, there's a chance of holding this at bay, of ending this before things get apocalyptic. I think that would be a refreshing setting for a zombie game.
Yeah. I asked this question because I don't think there's a single thing that this game can do that's going to get me to be like, yeah, I'm really, really pumped for this. Just because I don't think you can go over the top without being compared to like Dead Rising. And I think there's too many other zombie games, one of which is developed by a Sony studio that does the serious storytelling in a zombie world 100 times better, you know?
They're infected. They're not zombies.
Just like those giant robots aren't dinosaurs in Horizon Zero Dawn. Oh, my gosh. But
I had to say it.
Those post-apocalyptic monster-based horror settings. There we go. I just don't think there's anything that Days Gone's going to be able to do. Like, even the survival side of it, there are games that do it better. State of Decay is a much better survival game than I think Days Gone will be. 7 Days to Die is a much better survival game than I think Days Gone is going to be. Like, I just don't see it being better than any game at any particular thing except the horde thing, and that just doesn't matter to me. That's not fun to me. Like, having a bunch of bullet sponge hordes is not what I want to deal with. So
it is. You make a good point. This is kind of what I was saying before. It's caught in a weird place because all of the things it is trying to do, other Sony games have done better or are most likely going to do better. There are better Sony exclusive open world games. There are better Sony exclusive zombie games and post-apocalyptic games. I think 3 of Sony's exclusives studios have worked on a post-apocalyptic game. If you include Horizon, that's post. They call it post-apocalyptic, but whatever the fuck, it's the same thing. So yeah, I just don't like. I honestly didn't even think about this game until you mentioned it for this topic.
Yeah, it's the forgotten child of Sony exclusives outside of Dreams, which like is still standing in the middle of a closed Disneyland somewhere.
I think I have a better understanding of what Death Stranding is than I do of what Dreams is.
Dreams is a fever dream.
Man.
It should have been called
Speaking
that.
of games that we're not sure if they do or don't exist, we move on to everybody's favorite game we play at the end of this podcast. There are too many games, but this isn't one of them. So I have 4 games listed here. 3 of them are real. 1 of them is fake. You guys must tell me which one of them is fake. To remind everybody of the score, Larry has 2 points. Cody Codsworth Mellowkline, freelance gaming journalist extraordinaire, with the scoops on Dying Light 2's release date, has 2 points, which may be a hint to which month Dying Light will be releasing in.
No
And then
comment.
I have 1 point for stumping the panel several weeks ago. Gentlemen, are you ready to play?
Yeah. I saw
Let's
on
do
Twitter
it.
that you're very confident you're going to win this week.
No, I said that Cody's going to win this week.
Oh, I can't read.
Number
apparently.
1. Bendy and the Ink Machine. Play as Henry as he revisits the demons of his past by exploring the abandoned animator's workshop of Joey Drew Studios. With twists and turns around every corner, Bendy and the Ink Machine is sure to thrill you and decimate your childhood. 2. Misery. Between the tests, the tumultuous social waters, and the pressure to succeed, high school is filled with misery. This short narrative experience explores the harsh reality of teenage depression. Number 3, Chicken Range. The object of the game is to shoot the chickens using an array of different weaponry, from pistols to AK-47s, RPGs to alien ray guns. Number 4, 7 billion humans. Automate swarms of office workers to solve puzzles inside your very own parallel computer made of people. So your options this week: Bendy and the Ink Machine, Misery, Chicken Range, 7 billion humans. Cody, we're going to start with you this week. Which one of these do you think is not a real game?
I know one of these.
Well, then we're even from last week because Larry knew
I won't
Crail the
say.
Scoot.
I won't say. So what is it? Bendy and the Ink Machine, Misery,
Chicken Range, and 7 billion humans.
Chicken Range. I think I'm gonna go with Chicken Range. No, I'm gonna go
Okay.
with 7 billion humans.
All right, so that gives you a mighty big hint there, Larry, that one of those other 2 is a real game.
Unless he deliberately picked Chicken Range first to throw me off.
Bum, bum.
I hate to do that. I hate when we land on the same game because nothing's going to change this week. But I too think that it's 7 billion humans, and I really feel like that's it. So I'm going with
Cody,
it.
which one is the real game?
I've
okay.
played Bendy.
All right, well, I won this week, boys and girls, because Misery is the game that is not real.
Well done, because I was like,
Nice.
that one's definitely real. That's the sort
was
of social
too
commentary game
serious.
someone's definitely
I had to
made.
throw you guys off the scent. I had to throw a serious one in there. I will not be making this game. All the other ones I will be
You will
making.
not.
I was also like, Luke Croft hates teenagers. There's no way he spent even 5 seconds thinking about what they go through.
You think I'm trying to empathize?
Isn't it? It's also a Stephen King book.
Is it about
Yeah.
teenage depression? Oh, okay.
No.
All right. Well, it's all tied up between the 3 of us now. 2-2-2, which is the greatest Overwatch comp as well.
And you finally know when Dying Light 2 is coming out February 2nd of 2002.
Got to hop in that time machine that made a story from 2011, one of this week's biggest gaming stories.
We'll play Titanfall 2 on our way back.
We'll buy it on release night. We'll be one of the 12 people that bought it on release. All right, Larry, who are you?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at Larry Hunts Zombies. And this week I'll be giving you the greatest tweet flashbacks from 2011.
Codsworth.
Please. I'm Cody. You can find me on Twitter at ProElectionaire. This week I'll probably be tweeting about testicles and all the adventures I have with testicles.
Whose?
My testicles.
I'm Luke Croft. You can find me on Twitter at TK from Antioch. And this week, my weekday tweets are going to be available as part of one subscription service, and then my weekend tweets are going to be part of another. You can package them all together for 2.5 times the price, so it's not even remotely a deal.
Are there going to be mystery tweets thrown in there?
They're going to be highly curated, though. Yeah. High quality, highly curated, or however the hell they put it. So yeah, this has been PvA Radio. We get together every week and talk about the biggest gaming news stories over the last decade or so, and then push it out to you on streaming services everywhere, on all your podcast services. Starting in a few weeks, we're going to be streaming over on twitch.tv/PvA Radio. Also, we're planning a little horror episode that we're probably going to live stream over on twitch.tv/PvA Radio as well. If you have a question you want us to answer on the podcast, go to playerversusall.com/PVAQ, shoot that over to us, and we will definitely read that. But until next week, guys, we love you.
Why, that's the second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.